Welcome to Kicked in the Head. Today, I'm going to be sharing 7 nourishing things that you could be doing at home to make yourself feel a little bit more energized, stimulated, connected, and nourished. These things I have been doing at home myself during the very strict lockdown in Melbourne when I have been very much challenged emotionally, mentally. These things have really been helping me during the pandemic and during the course of my life. Some of these things I've been doing for 15 years. Others I've recently started paying attention to a lot more and becoming a lot more engaged with. So I hope you'll find them nourishing. Let me know of your nourishing things as well. So these things are not in any particular order. I'm going to start with number 1 is just really, I think it's one of the more important things, but my favorite things are actually right at the back. They're the last 2 things. But this is a pretty important thing. Those of us out there who are trying to create, whether you're creating music, art, writing, movies, whether you have a high pressured role and you're constantly needing to progress, you have to fuel yourself somehow in order to be able to add value. So we all have our fuel that we need to be active, to be stimulated, to be energized. And it's usually not just one thing. So I call this finding your inspirational frequency. So, which is just your fuel. And it's never just one thing. It's never just one book, one author, one channel. It's always a whole range of things. And the broader that you stretch yourself, the more inspiration that you're going to find, the more ideas you're going to have. This is something that I try to do on a daily basis, is engage with my inspirational frequency, which could be, they range from talks, interviews, watching interviews with people I admire. Howard Stern, for example, he's someone who's able to get really honest insight from people, and I really admire that. I mean, things like TED Talks, masterclasses, the masterclasses, the paid subscription. I find that really inspirational, and I'm always learning something. There's a whole variety of masterclasses, from design to directors, writers, chefs, scientists, pretty much everything you can find, makeup artists as well. There also could be like Oprah Talks, Red Table Talk, Russell Brand, Brene Brown, she has a podcast. Podcast is obviously, really great way to really engage and stimulate yourself. Sometimes subscribing to things like the New Yorker or the New York Times. They had a lot of audio articles, so you can be on the go, you could be in the car, you could be on the train, listening to an article, an essay in audio format. Sometimes it might be watching a short film, or finding those channels that do creative things. Like there's a channel called Nowness that I like to watch now and again, and they do little short films about random people, a person living in the woods, or an artist, or they cover architects' homes or interior designers, various artistic videos that just might make you stretch your mind, give you new ideas, make you see things through a new lens. And I'm always looking for that thing that's going to stretch me just that tiny little bit more. So constantly finding those and paying attention to the people that speak to you. Continue to find those people and watch as much as you can with those people. Recently, I've discovered Ethan Hawke. I mean, I know he's an actor. He's been doing a lot of movies. I've watched a lot of his movies, but I've never really knew that how he has a really brilliant creative mind. And I saw a TED Talk that he did, which was really unconventional, and just recently, I think it was in last month, and then I discovered all these other really insightful interviews with him. I've watched one of his documentaries that he's made on a musician who was a concert pianist, who became a teacher. Really fascinating stuff. And he's a real artist, and he's so generous with what he shares. So I love discovering people like that. Often we watch these interviews, people are so rehearsed, so contrived, that they're not able to stretch or be flexible in any way. They're so closed, and they only share so much. They don't want the world to know anything about them, personal lives, and I just think it's really sad, because I think sharing his stories is really, really important. Think about the people who have put themselves out there, like Brene Brown, Oprah, and they've shared so much about their lives, and it's inspiring to others. So I'm always looking for people like that who are able to share something real and truthful about themselves. Okay, so number 2, So this is something I started doing during a pandemic, and I don't know why I've never done this before, because I think this is such a great idea. So it's actually arranging topics for thoughtful discussion with your friends. Next time you do a Zoom chat, Skype, whatever, organize a specific topic for you to discuss with your friend, you know, as well as having a general catch up. So some of those topics could be, what is your idea of happiness? Where do you derive your happiness? How do you define fulfillment? Well, you know, think about asking each other questions about specific moments in your lives where you found fulfillment or happiness, or the opposite. Also, some of the other things that I've talked about with some of my friends is, you know, how have your parents impacted the person that you've become? You know, what are the negative traits? How have, you know, their insecurities have been manifested in you? And just thinking about specific questions like that, thinking about deeply about these topics, like what we bring in from our parents, you know, into our current lives and into our relationships, into our, you know, the baggage that we all kind of bring along back from, you know, the people that we've been exposed to throughout our lives, and just asking each other and connecting, you know, in a more meaningful way. I think I've really enjoyed those discussions with some of my friends. Okay, so number 3. Okay, this is a pretty important one. I think if you're like me, you know, who's on Instagram quite a bit, or on some other channel maybe, but I tend to go on Instagram and it's, you know, it just sucks you in. And I used to spend a lot more time there. I try not to spend as much time anymore. But what I've recently done is I've kind of curated my IG account and the people that I follow. So I think I got rid of about 500 accounts. Because I really wanted to make sure that if I'm going to be engaging with this platform, I want it to be a little bit more meaningful, and I don't want to be bombarded with things that I don't need, or with values that I don't really want to be exposed to. I think sometimes we just have to review what we have outgrown and what we can be connecting to and engaging with a little bit more. So what I did, I've really targeted 2 categories in that, and that is fashion. I mean, obviously, you know, fashion is one of those things. Every fashion brand is just trying to increase your desire to buy things. And I don't really need to be exposing my eyes to this constant stuff that I should be buying. So, and the thing is, when I really do need to buy something, I will go on my laptop and I'll find that brand and I'll buy that thing that I need to buy. I'm not going to forget about the fashion brands that I like. You're not going to do that. And the secondary thing that I targeted was influencers who I felt like, you know, they either were just constantly selling something to me, or influencers that were just not really adding any value to me, you know. And so, and the thing is about Instagram is that if you're someone who's following, like, you know, over 500 accounts, you're not going to see all of those accounts. It doesn't happen. And so, and what will tend to happen is, I think the really popular accounts, they will come up, especially the accounts that are selling stuff. They will be coming up because they are paying for advertising. So it's, you know, it's inevitable that you're going to be constantly exposed to that. So if you reduce the number of accounts that you follow and increase the number of accounts that actually add value to your life and make you think deeper about the world that you happen to live in, I'm gonna link up some of the accounts that I've been following on Instagram that have been making me think a little bit deeper about the world, and you know, and I found that to be a lot more nourishing. So when I get on the Instagram platform, I know my engagement's not going to be completely, you know, wasteful. Okay, so number 4 is create a vision board. So I know a lot of us have checklists, and I do too sometimes. I used to do a lot more checklists, and it feels good to do a checklist, you know, especially when you can tick that off. A visual board is really your visual path. Basically, it is your goals, your purposes, your characteristics, you know, the things that you want to envision in the person that you want you to be. So I'm just gonna show you a little bit of what my vision board looks like. So basically, I have, you know, this is, you know, it could be anything really, but I have a daily vision for myself that I think about on a daily basis. And that is, today, I choose courage over comfort. I choose to be vulnerable and be part of the arena than just being an observer of life. So to me, this is really important. I don't want to be an observer of life. That's not what I don't want to be sitting on some sideline and judging and not really engaging with, real life living myself. This is something I saw from Brené Brown, by the way. So this is her wisdom. But the other things, I have other goals, long-term goals for myself, purposes that I've written down that I think are mine, belong to me, but I think they will probably continue to expand and change and just kind of grow. Questions that I ask myself, and this is really important, to be asking yourself questions, to really think about how you're living, the person that you are, if you are the person that you want to be, and if this is the life that you want to lead. So some of the questions that I have written down on my vision board is, so what is most meaningful to me? And that could be, at any given moment. What am I excited about? What makes me energized? What makes me feel connected? These things are very important. Pay attention to these things. They are very much aligned to your happiness and your purpose. What do I need to express? And how do I express it? And how am I moving towards my dreams? What does this moment has to teach me? I think we've all been asking that question during this year. How do I get access to the heart? Yeah, some of the other things I have in it, is a whole bunch of other things that mean something to me. Things that I've decided that I will not expose myself, things that I will not allow myself to do, sort of values that I've really realized, no, these are my values, and I'm not going to allow anyone to question my values and make me feel like, they're not something of value and that I should be rethinking my own values. So things like that. So, I have things that I will not do, things I will. Scale of aliveness, checking in with yourself and, questioning how alive are you right now in this moment. So it's basically, 0 to 100 scale, where 25% of aliveness is really autopilot. You're feeling a bit, helpless state of following desires, cravings, instincts, whatever the outcome. You just kind of like go with the flow, and whatever happens is meant to happen, not really kind of like choosing to drive your life. That's autopilot. So 50% is egotistical, dominated by the ego. 75% is absorbed. So this is a pretty good state of being, learning, open mind, self-reflection from introspection. And 100% is completely aware, enlightened and aware of the world around them. Being out of the comfort zones, challenging yourself, growing, just becoming more conscious, more mindful about the world, engaging with it more meaningfully. So your vision board can be just anything that you want it to be, but really thinking deeply about the person that you want to be, what your goals are, what your purpose is, the questions that you should be asking yourself. If you're really living the life that you should be living, and if you're not living the life that you're living, that you want to live, and you feel you're not really on the path that you're meant to be on, then you have a lot of questions to ask yourself and figure out, how do I get to the path that where I want to be at? Because so many times we get off path. I've been there, done that, and you know it because there's a part of you that is truthful and there's a part of you that is not truthful with yourself, and you feed yourself lies and you believe and you want to believe those lies. When you get in touch with the truth part of yourself, you will know. It's like a whisper. You will know. It will tell you this is not the right path. This is not the person you want to be. And part of something that I question myself is like, how proud would I be of the person that I am right now in 10 years? The massive transformational moments of my life have been when I've looked beyond right now and I've looked at myself. I've tried to envision myself in 10 years and think, well, if this is the person I want to be, then looking back, would I be happy with this with me right now? And the moments when I've had to make a lot of changes were the moments when I had to say no. This is not. I would not be like, oh wow. But I would be okay with me looking back and being like, well, that was a moment of transformation when I realized I went off path, and then I would be proud of myself that I realized that. Number 5 is gratitude. This is the most basic thing that you can do, but this is really one of the most important things that you should be doing on a daily basis, like having a coffee if you have coffee. It's like one of those things that you don't even think about. You wake up and at the beginning you might have to make some conscious effort, but It should just be something like you think, I'm so grateful for the person in my life right now. Or I'm so grateful for the thing that I learned the other day when I was reading that passage or that book, or when I was having a chat with my friend. And I think it's the personal things that you achieve, I think, the way you will find truer happiness. So it could be your character is something that is unique to you, that you should be grateful for, that you have that. Whether it's something, it's to be able to look at the positives in life, and to always find the gold in the bad moments that we often have. Take something from that, and always just have that positive attitude. I think that's a really beautiful thing. So we're up to number 6. We have 2 more things left. Okay, poetry. I love poetry. I've been writing poetry for years. Fortunately, I grew up with poetry. My mum wrote poetry. My mom used to make me recite poetry when I was a little girl. I've kind of had the love of poetry in my being. But something I discovered recently is a book called The Poetry Pharmacy, and it's curated by a guy called William Sanghart. And what he does, I've come across him on YouTube quite randomly, and he does this thing called Poetry Pharmacy booths. So at events, he'll set up a booth and people will make appointments with him. He's really well known. He's written loads of books as well. And people will make appointments with him, and they will share, with the struggles or whatever. It'll be like a mini counseling session, but not really counseling session, because instead of giving his, counsel or medication, he will prescribe the right poem for the person, which I think is such a beautiful concept. And the beautiful thing about poetry is that it's brief, it's not like reading a book, and it can hold incredible life lessons in like a paragraph. So what's not to love about that, right? So I'm going to share a really brief poem called The Ideal by James Fenton. This is where I came from. I passed this way. This should not be shameful or hard to say. A self is a self. It is not a screen. A person should respect what he has been. This is my past, which I shall not discard. This is the ideal. This is hard. So this poem is obviously about regret and shame. And I love it because I feel like so many people out there, myself included, sometimes I look back and I think, oh God, oh yeah, I did that. Oh, it just gives you the creeps on the inside, and you feel kind of shameful about it. But we really shouldn't be holding on to those moments of shame. The person that you were then might not be the person that you are now, and it's all part of the development and part of the growth. And what I love about this particular book, so what William Sanghart does is that he's kind of divided this into different sections: mental and emotional well-being, motivation, self-image and self-acceptance, the world and other people, love and loss. So you can pretty much find any poem, and on the other second page, so he's got the poem here, and then on the second page he's got his own reflections on the poem. I'm going to read that because I think it's really beautiful. So about this poem, he writes, luckily for all of us, when we finally prepare to open that door, the cupboard that we thought was full of snakes often turns out to contain nothing more frightening than dust. But self-forgiveness is hard. Of course it is. If it's not hard, then we're not doing it right. We've all had that flinching moment of sudden recollection, something we said or did which we regret so intensely that the feeling is almost physical. How could emotions this visceral be easy to overcome? This poem reminds us forcefully of the difficulty of self-acceptance. It braces us for the journey ahead and reminds us what we're aiming for. We can try to live up to the ideal, to be at ease with our own mistakes, our own flaws, but we will inevitably fail some of the time. Anyone would. The trick is to keep the ideal in mind. The trick is not to be discouraged. I love that. The trick is not to be discouraged. So do not be discouraged. Do not feel ashamed. Read poetry. Get this book. He's got a second volume as well. And also, if you come across any great collection of poems, please let me know. I'm always looking for a book like that to buy. Okay, so number 7. Okay, this is one of my favorite things to do, and this is something that I've been doing for the longest amount of time. I think I've been doing this for 15 years. It is taking notes. And I know it sounds like the most basic thing in the world, but how many times have you listened to something, you heard something, you read something, and you're like, oh, I need to remember that, I need to remember that. and you forgot. And I know we have phones, and maybe you're someone who likes, doing everything in your phone, but I am not that person. I like having physical books. So I carry notebooks like this, and I have a lot of notebooks. Unfortunately, I've misplaced over the last 10 years because I've moved like 7 times in the last 10 years. But I still have quite a few that I really treasure because they're full of really insightful things that I often will come back to. So I'm going to share 2 things from my little notebook, things that mean something to me and still continue to mean something to me. Charlie Kaufman is someone who I've admired for a while, and he's a screenwriter who wrote Adaptation, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Big John Malkovich, and quite a few other movies. And I wrote a screenplay this year, and when I was writing my screenplay, I thought about his words all the time. So I saw this in a video on YouTube, and he says this: say who you are in your life and in your work, and if you offer yourself with authenticity and generosity, I will be moved. I love that. It's even though I wrote this down thinking about my writing, same principles apply to living your life in the most meaningful way that you can. When you're authentic, when you're honest with yourself, when you're generous with how you share yourself and what you share in the right moments, people will be moved, and you never know who might be moved, and you never know how they might be moved. So I think it's important, and I think also you're creating meaningful connections with people, because people feel when somebody's not being truthful with you, or they're not being truthful about their lives, you feel that, and you're not going to share as much of yourself with that person either. Like we bounce back those energies. So it's important to be the best version of yourself that you can be. Okay, so another thing I'm going to share is this is David Foster Wallace said this in an interview on Charlie Rose, I think. And he said this: I just think to automatically assume that somebody is less aware, or that their interior life is somehow less rich and complicated and acutely perceived than mine, makes me not as good of a writer. So I know he's speaking as a writer again. I feel the same principle apply to being a human. You're not as good of a human when you place so many assumptions on the people that come into your life. So I love this because it reminds me of the importance of questioning your own truths that you've learned over the course of your life, and the assumptions that you place, whether it's on people, whether it's on various beliefs, or the importance of questioning those and questioning how you perceive people, how you perceive the world, and how engaged you are, and how much you pay attention to the things that really don't matter, Because when you pay attention to those things, then you might miss out on really getting to know the person and finding out their true nature and connecting in a beautiful way. So that's it for me. I hope you like that. And I'm just going to share one more thing, and this is by George Harrison. Whenever you see someone important to you, you should always give them a hug. I love that. So I hope you enjoyed my tips on nourishment. Stay tuned for more tips coming next month. I'm going to do this every month. Please don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned for more tips and poetry coming this week as well. So see ya. Thank you, and thanks for watching.